One of the questions is what he told the president-elect when he talked to him at Trump Tower in January about the Steele dossier and the fact that it had been paid for by the Clinton campaign. Take a look.
No, I don't even think I used the term Steele dossier. I just talked about additional material.
But did he have a right to know that?
That had been financed by his political opponents? I don't know the answer to that. It wasn't necessary for my goal, which was to alert him that we had this information.
Congressman, what do you think of Comey's answer, and what do you think of Comey's book?
Well, as for his book, Chris, I'm disappointed. I hold prosecutors and law enforcement officials to a higher standard. So I think the book is sad. Let's don't kid ourselves. Jim Comey now complains that President Trump is untethered from the truth. He'd still be the FBI director if he had his way. So all of the complaints he had about President Trump, he was willing to put those aside so he could keep his job. The reason he wrote his book is because he got fired. Not because he thinks President Trump is untethered from the truth, not because President Trump's ties are too long, not because he thinks he wears tanning bed goggles. It's because he got fired. Now, as for whether or not he should have told the president the source of this salacious opposition research, would you want to know? I mean, that's the first question you ask is, where did you get that from so you can judge the credibility? I'm more concerned about the fact that they didn't tell the FISA court. That's what I'm really concerned about, because President Trump doesn't sign off on warrants. The FISA judge did. So I think he should have told President Trump, but I know for a fact they should have told the FISA court.
Well, let me pick up on this, because we learned this week that you and the chair of the House Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, have now read the original FBI memo that launched the whole Trump investigation in the summer of 2016. Having read it, are you persuaded that they had a legitimate reason to launch this probe?
I've always been persuaded. I didn't have to read the initiating document. I mean, you've got George Papadopoulos, you've got a meeting at Trump Tower, you've got an email from Cambridge Analytica. You've got reasons to look into what Russia did and who, with anyone, did they do it with. So this origination document is important to me, though, because it goes to the credibility of those who launched the investigation. Was it because of George Papadopoulos? Because this initiation took place months after George Papadopoulos had his little drunken conversation in a bar, or was it the dossier? So that's important to me to know, but you're going to have a Russia, someone hacked the DNC server, someone hacked John Podesta's emails, someone played games with the American people, whether or not there's a dossier. So I've never thought that discrediting the dossier did away with the Russia probe.
Honestly, never thought these words would come out of my mouth, but I don't know whether the current president of the United States was with prostitutes peeing on each other in Moscow in 2013. It's possible, but I don't know.
Things that we never thought we'd have on the air. We ask you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Facebook from Hal Widston. Is there any new information in this book, or is it just Comey as a disgruntled former government employee attacking President Trump? Mark? How do you answer, Hal?
I think there's not a lot that's new in this book. One of the things that I found unique was the fact that the former director actually talked about there being classified information that we still don't know about relating to Attorney General Lynch that would have compromised her, which also influenced his decisions in the Hillary Clinton investigation. Now, if those are unsubstantiated, that's very reckless for him to actually throw his former boss under the bus in a book like that. And if they're true, then I think we need to know what is actually out there that compromised her and helped prompt his decisions in addition to political calculus.
But what do you make of what he has to say about the president, both factually and also his opinions?
I think the one thing that has brought Washington together in the last year and a half is everyone at one point or another has questioned James Comey's credibility, his disservice to the FBI, and wanted him to lose his job. And I think he just continues that narrative of flip-flopping his stories and not having not a lot of credibility in the book.
Chuck, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Woodward and Bernstein, how damaging is this book to Donald Trump?
Well, my expectation was somewhere in the 7, 8, 9 range, and I think it came much more in the 4 or 5 or maybe 3 range. Look, people, it's like everything else. People who are already predisposed to think ill of the president are going to think ill of him, and vice versa. And so what you're looking for in this is some real powerful nugget of brand new information, not just the atmospherics about how I felt like maybe I was listening to a mafia don. That's atmospherics. And I don't yet see a blockbuster new fact in here. What is interesting is this revelation of Comey, it kind of admitting, I was thinking about politics as I was going through some of these decisions regarding what I would say about Hillary. And he's sort of confessing that he got that wrong, or, and what that tells me is this is a guy who's kind of bad at spin, says he shouldn't do spin because it's inappropriate to his role, and then keeps trying to do spin. And in a way, he's I wouldn't dismiss him as some kind of disgruntled informant. It's much more important than that, but he is still trying to affect his legacy in the public eye. I got to say just one final thing, how we all have to sort of sit back and think how extraordinary it is. The former director of this large police law enforcement agency is calling the President of the United States somebody he thought of as a mafia boss on the one hand, and the President responding, calling him a slimeball. This kind of interaction between these kinds of people is just, it is really a bad show for democracy. It's totally unseemly.
Jonah, your thoughts about the Comey book, both the facts and his characterizations of the president?
Yeah, no, I largely agree with Chuck. I was always skeptical that he could have real blockbuster news in this, because it would be outrageous for the former FBI director to sit on damning news so he could monetize it a year after he is fired. If he had anything truly damning, he has to give it to Mueller, and he can't say anything. So I expected the book to be mostly atmospherics. I do think that the problem for Comey is that he is basically trying to get down on Trump's level on the one hand, while seeming above the fray on the other. That is a hard look for a polished politician, and he just doesn't pull it off, and I think it leaves him diminished.
It actually reminds me of during the Republican primary when the candidates, they didn't know whether to go high, go low. When they would go low, then that's when Trump, the candidate, had them and knocked them out of the ring.
We got less than 30 seconds. What impact could this have, his clear animus and the fact that he's told his story, if he ends up being a witness, and this is just a hypothetical, in a case on the issue of obstruction of justice, as he damaged his credibility?
Well, obviously, this president's lawyers were going to go after him as a disgruntled former employee no matter what. The book doesn't change that.
All right.